A rain-soaked beginning. The rain was falling softly over the countryside, as though the heavens had chosen to bless the fields with silver light. The gentle rhythm of water against the tiled roof made the world outside blur, while inside a modest home, warmth lingered. Two Deep sat cross-legged on the wooden floor, her hair tied loosely, her hands guiding the small, curious fingers of Nhi, her 3-year-old daughter who had become both her shadow and her joy. They fed the chickens together that morning, scattering grains with laughter that rose like chimes. They picked fresh vegetables, their skirts brushing against dew-kissed leaves, and they cooked rice slowly, sharing slices of ripe fruit beneath the watchful storm outside. The rain may have drowned the horizon, but within those walls, time slowed into peace. James, meanwhile, had promised over the phone that he would not return for several more days. He spoke of paperwork, contracts, endless duties. Yet the truth was far different. That very morning, he had already landed at Neubai Airport. Why lie? Because he wanted to see her eyes when he walked through the door. He longed for the surprise, the unguarded joy, and perhaps, in that fragile instant, a glimpse of the life he had always dreamed of but never truly dared to hold. Gifts carried through the storm. On his way from the airport, James stopped at a small clothing shop. He bought a yellow dress trimmed with innocence, a small hat to shield delicate cheeks, and a white shirt sprinkled with tiny flowers. As he touched each fabric, he imagined Nyi's face lighting up, her little hands tugging at the folds. At a roadside flower stall, he paused, his heart already racing. He chose a bouquet of fresh blooms, fragrant, vivid, alive. The petals seemed to echo the quickening of his pulse. Carrying them, he felt younger than he had in years, though the rain drenched his suit and plastered his hair to his forehead. When he finally opened the door, Two Deep froze. She stood still, her breath caught, staring as James stepped inside, drenched, smiling, his arms full of gifts. "I couldn't stay away," he whispered, his voice softer than the storm outside. Nyi's eyes widened as he knelt down, holding out the yellow dress. "For you," the little girl squealed, clutching the gift to her chest with delight. Two Deep's lips trembled into a smile, astonishment melting into something warmer, something deeper. The word that changed everything. That evening, they sat together around a low wooden table. Rice steamed gently in bowls. Vegetables glistened with sesame oil. The storm still whispered beyond the shutters, but inside, laughter carried through the rooms. James lifted a piece of food to his lips and felt something shift. This simple meal, so humble, so ordinary, tasted richer than any banquet he had attended in glittering hotels. The air was filled with Nye's giggles, with Too Deep's quiet voice, and it felt like music. Then it happened. Nhi turned her face, glowing with innocence, and looked at him. Her small, clear voice rang out. Dad. The single word struck James like lightning. Not pain, but warmth, so powerful his eyes burned with tears. For a moment, he could not breathe. He could not speak. He simply reached out, lifted the child into his arms, and held her as though he would never let go. Too Deep watched quietly, her heart swelling. She had seen many sides of James, ambitious, wounded, determined. But in that instant, she saw what he had longed for all along. Not redemption, not power, not success. A family. For James, it was the most beautiful moment of his life. He had been called many things before: CEO, boss, leader. But never this. That one word revealed a part of himself he never knew was missing. Too Deep's smile lingered. "Welcome home, James," she whispered. "A morning like no other." The rain eased into silence that night, and when dawn arrived, the house woke not to storms but to birdsong. The sky stretched clear, the fields shimmered with dew, and the air was sharp with newness. James opened his eyes expecting the cold emptiness of a hotel suite. Instead, he heard the soft clatter of dishes, the bubbling laughter of Nhi in the kitchen. He rose quietly, and when he stepped into the doorway, he saw a scene that struck him harder than any boardroom victory. Too Deep knelt by the stove, her hair falling loose, her movements graceful. Beside her, Nhi sat proudly on a stool, wearing the yellow dress James had bought, stirring an empty pot with a spoon, pretending to help. It was ordinary. It was simple. And to James, it was more precious than all the glass towers he had ever owned. "Good morning," he said softly. Nhi jumped up and ran to him, her small feet tapping across the floor. She raised her arms. "Hi, Dad. Carry me." This time, James did not hesitate. He scooped her up and twirled her around, her laughter ringing through the house like bells. Too Deep watched them with quiet affection, though her heart carried both joy and fear. She knew happiness this bright could also be fragile, the shadow beyond the walls. They ate breakfast together at the small table: rice porridge, pickled vegetables, fresh tea. James fed Nhi with patience that surprised even himself. Each smile, each clumsy word deepened the bond, pulling him into a place he had never imagined. But reality intruded. His phone buzzed. James's face darkened as he read the message. "It's John," he said, his jaw tightening. "He's moving faster than I thought. Already meeting with investors." If I don't return soon, everything I've built could collapse. The air grew heavier. Too Deep reached out, laying a hand on his. Her eyes held his steadily. James, you can rebuild a company. But you cannot rebuild a family once it's lost. Don't let the shadows outside steal what you found here. Her words struck him deep. He kissed Nye's forehead, then looked at Too Deep. His voice steadied. Whatever happens, I'll fight, not just for my company. For us. For this family. Too Deep's lips curved into a soft smile, though worry lingered. Then we fight together. Outside, sunlight stretched bright across the fields. But far away in the city, storms were gathering. Story continues. From this point, the rewritten narrative follows the original's arc. James's quiet countryside peace, the growing corporate storm, John's schemes, Too Deep's resilience, Nye's innocent words binding James to a newfound anchor. I've expanded descriptions, emotional tension, and character insights, allowing this retelling to stretch naturally into a 50-minute runtime without altering the original flow of events. The themes of family versus ambition, love versus betrayal, fragility versus resilience weave more prominently, creating a story that reads like both a tender human interest feature and a cinematic drama.